Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Today, we are diving deep into the world of creativity and entrepreneurship, where businesses are not just entities, but expressions of their founders' souls. Have you ever considered your business as a canvas or your storefront as a gallery showcasing your essence to the world? Well, our guest today, Jean Luc Boissonneault, certainly does. He sees businesses as works of art, each telling a unique story, reflecting the passion and vision of their creators. From luxury personal training studios to serene meditation spaces, Jean Luc has crafted his businesses as pieces of art, imbuing them with his own essence. But his creativity doesn't stop there. With over 2 decades of experience in writing, he's authored a multitude of ebooks spanning various topics from health to business to even children's literature. What Jean-Luc teaches us is that our businesses, our creations, they are extensions of us. They carry our values, our dreams, and even our constraints. But within those constraints lies our brand, our unique voice in the world. So today, we're going to explore how creativity intertwines with entrepreneurship, how artistry fuels business, and how constraints can become the very essence of our brand. And to make that happen, I need to welcome our guest, Jean-Luc, to the show. So welcome and thank you for being here today.
Wow, thank you so much for that intro. That just gave me chills. I was like, oh my God, it's speaking to my soul.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We like to really get down and dirty into the very heart of the matter. And so, but thank you for being here. And this is a conversation that is vital to creatives because so often we forget that if we're going to make a career from our art, we have to think like an entrepreneur and take care of our business, or we have to pay someone else to do that. But the problem is that some of us artists, maybe especially those who are just starting out, we aren't really rolling in the cash to pay anyone to do much for us. But before we jump into that, tell us about you and your journey into entrepreneurship and how you've incorporated creativity into it.
Sure. I, from a young age, was a kid that drew a lot. Like drawing was my passion as a child, I just loved drawing faces of people, all sorts of faces and eyeballs, and just was fascinated with drawing. And I went through school, with this skill, this thing, this practice that I was just obsessed about. And I remember going through high school and my art teacher saying, you have to pursue this. You have to go to a special school about it. And I was torn because of what you just mentioned, because on one side, I was really good at art, and I was also really good at gym, like physical stuff, so sports. And I was torn between these two things. Like I'll get 100% in gym, but I'll also get 100% in art. But my idea of art was that I will be a starving artist, that there was no financial gain there. So I didn't see it. I just didn't. So I actually went into policing. I took the route of the physicality, where I was like, okay, I'm fit and I can do this, so I'll go in there because there seems to be a future there. And I lasted 2 years. I gave up. I was like, this is so not for me. Didn't like it. I was a personal trainer at the time. I was a bodybuilder, which I also saw bodybuilding as an art form, because when you're bodybuilding, you're sculpting your body, right? You can say, oh, there's an element of aesthetics in there in bodybuilding, where it's like, okay, your calves need to be the same size as your arms. And it married sort of the art and the physicality together, that I was like, okay, if I work diligently on my calves, over the next 2 years, I will gain that symmetry. And it's very much, marrying the two of that. So I really loved that aspect of bodybuilding. And then I was a personal trainer. And it wasn't until I was around 18 that I started to get into entrepreneurship. And when I really started to get into branding, I was like, wow, this is cool. Like I can start to think about colors and space and designing. I went from personal trainer to owning my own gym. And then when I opened my own gym, I was like, oh, I can get involved in the design process of the actual physical location and the experience that provides. And I always was going to galleries, you know, and I was fascinated by galleries, and not the art itself, but the experience on where the artists will, you know, hang their paintings a little different, or like you walk into a room and maybe it's on the ceiling or it's on the floor, and it's really breaking the rules, you know, and that, like, oh wow, they made us feel something when we left there. And I was like, I can do the same thing about my club, you know, and how can I improve the design of the place. And then I ended up building that, and I had managers, and I would encourage them to go to the galleries, to start thinking outside the box, to really not be like everyone else, and to try to come up with things that are unique, you know, that people can feel. So that was sort of the journey into realizing, oh, like the branding, I can add this element of art to what I'm doing. But then it became like, oh, everything I'm doing is actually art. Like, it's not just the colors and the logos and the pictures and all that, but the actual design. I got fascinated with reading about design. I get that one book with, it has a sort of a design. It was about products and how products have emotion. You know, how a knife is about trust, and like a man really trusts a knife because it's just like, it's so simple, and how different objects and shapes give us these emotional feelings. And I was like, wow, okay, so like every system I put in, even the system aspect, the sort of mechanical aspect of my business, is also art. And and then I went on a spiritual journey. So I ended up selling all my businesses at one point. I had 4 locations by then, really beautiful branding. If you see it, it's gorgeous. It was a luxury personal training studios. And from there, I started a meditation studio, half kind of T connection area, and then a modern meditation studios using projection on the walls of different destination spots, so you could all meditate on the beach. And they had a 5 sensory experience of smell and everything. It was really innovative. But then I let all that go, and I went on a sort of spiritual journey to find out who I was beyond this ambition, just letting go. And then I, you know, through that 7 years, this is why I'm in Nicaragua right now. It led me here from Canada. And, but throughout that journey, I realized, oh my God, everything we do is an expression of us. You know, everything I put out there, every story, every article I write, everything is just a mirror to me. So if I want to create something world class, I need to be world class. Like, if I want to, everything is a mirror. That, like, if I want something different, then I'm not going to go and try to change the mirror. You know, like like if I'm looking at the mirror and I want to smile, you know, I'm not going to change there. It starts with me smiling, and then it's reflected out. So the more work I could do on myself, of really getting to know who I was, the more I became more certain in, oh, this is me and this is not me. And then that's reflected in your art, because the constraints that you mentioned at the beginning, that the saying no is as important as the saying yes. And that when we do that, and we stand in conviction in what we believe to be right, that's felt by other people. So yeah, I think that summarizes where I'm at with my journey with art and entrepreneurship. And now I'm a coach, you know, to business leaders and that are building their businesses. I'm constantly going into holding up a mirror for them. Like, everything that's in front of you that's a block, whether it's financial, whether it's getting to the next level, it's like, listen to yourself. You know, there's wisdom there, and we're swayed by everything around us. You know, we're swayed by ideas so much. It's hard to listen deeply and say, okay, this is what I believe to be right. This is the path forward. These are the connections I'm seeing, and I can put it together and invent something, create something new with that. And I don't need to do it like everyone else. I can do my own way.
Oh yeah, no, like you are headed down the exact track that that this was what our conversation was intended for, because I have a lot of experience in network marketing. I spent 13 years in network marketing, and then I've had my own business for the last 20 years in some form or fashion. So I know what it is to have a brand. I know what it means, but there are so many. It is something so surprising to me because I just ventured into the world of writing novels. You know, I've always been a writer, I've always been creative, but to actually write a novel, publish it, and that kind of thing, you have to build a brand. But it is amazing to me how many, in my case, self-published authors, because, you know, when you're with a traditional publisher, they tend to sculpt you into what they want to present with your work and that kind of thing. But self-published authors, they are just throwing stuff to the wall to see what sticks, and they want to be everything to everybody, and that just, it blows my mind because I get it. It's hard. We have to hustle. We have to grind to get our stuff out there. Like it's a big noisy world when it comes to books and publishing, and we want to get noticed. Yeah, that's true. But like, how do we build a brand well in a world that is so noisy and loud? And I love what you said, because saying no and saying that's not me, that's okay. I think that's huge. So like, what is this first step in creating a brand for yourself? Maybe, I mean, if you want to talk about it from the author perspective or just in general.
The first steps, well, to me is like, I think that's an important question. What is the purpose of this? If I'm writing, for example, Liberty Race that I wrote for children, I wrote it for my daughter, you know, because to me it was a little teaching about the school system and about judgment towards others. The message of the book is don't let anyone else's opinion of you become your own reality. That's the real message in the book, because that's how I felt going through school, you know, and going through under a system that is trying to conform you to their specific agenda. And it's it's like a prison. You know, it's not much different than a prison. You're sitting there at a desk. It's completely unnatural for a child to do that, to be sitting there. It works on bells and lineups. You know, it's basically just trying to just kill your creativity and spirit. So to me, I'm not a big fan of the school system. I also wrote a book called School is Broken, because I felt really like this is a big problem, you know, and they don't take your my daughter. The reason I'm here is because I left because I wanted her to follow her passion, because she's homeschooled. I teach her a lot, you know, entrepreneurship, but you know, for example, when I wrote my book, School is Broken, I had the principal of my school, my high school, reach out to me and say, "Can I have a word with you?" I thought I was in trouble. I thought I was in trouble. You know, there was already like, geez, the fear is ingrained deep. You know, I'm a grown man. Like,
I felt that like deeply.
I said, "I don't think you're going to like anything I have to say," you know? And he said, "No, it's okay. It's okay." I know, you know, he knew about it. So at this point I had 3 personal training studios, 3 luxury studios. And he said, "Yeah, no, I'm just fascinated with, you know, your views on stuff. You've obviously done well for yourself. Can I come see you?" So he came, and he brought a young guy with him, maybe grade 9, you know, like, I don't know, 14, 15, which surprised me. And he came into my office, and he's like, "So what do you think? You came out with this book?" And I started telling him what I thought, you know, what I said to you, I just think it's completely wrong. I think we don't know where we're going, and we're teaching people towards an unknown future. Well, that doesn't make very much sense, does it? So why not turn it inwards and become resourceful instead of trying to pretend that we know what's going to happen later on. Like, let's be prepared instead for anything. And if we can, and the school system rips that away from us, you know. Coming here has really shown me that, like, how dependent we are and how we've given our power away to everything. And we have to return to our greatest resource, which is to return to source. And source is nature. So can we return to nature? Because there we learn everything. We learn how to build a house. I learned how to use creativity to figure out problems of water here, how to grow your own food, how to build your own shelter. Like, these are things I should have learned in school, like teach me about life instead of some stupid subject that I have zero interest in. Anyways, I can go on a big rant about that. And so I'm in the office, to return to the office. I'm in the office. He's with this young guy. And he goes, okay, you have all this like negative around school. What would you do about it? And my book was really about just pointing out all the faults, that it was designed for the Industrial Revolution, that it was meant to create factory workers, and those factory workers are just non-existent now. And now it's basically a stupid system that's just completely lost. And I said, well, I didn't really think about the solution. The purpose of the book wasn't to give any solution. It was just to point out how disastrous it is. But like I just had an instinct to just look at the kid, and I said, what are you into? And he said, I'm into gaming. And I said, okay, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Gaming. And here's a kid that's doing it on nights and weekends, just completely passionate about gaming, doing it out of fun, out of just pure passion. And I said, okay, what if in your class, do you have any other friends that are into gaming? And he was like, yeah, I have a bunch of friends into gaming. I said, okay, what if you guys all got together and decided you're going to create the ultimate game? Could you do it? And he was like, oh, that would be amazing, And he was just like, that would be awesome. And I turned to the principal. I said, listen, like, if I was a skateboarder as a kid, like as a teenager, if you told me and a bunch of my buddies that skateboard, can you make a skate park? If we provide you with the tools, the resources, if we give you the tools and the wood, can you guys build? We would have built the biggest, most incredible skate park in the world, because we would have worked day and night out of pure passion. So you ask me, where do you start? That's where you start. What are you passionate about? Because no one, even in business, no one can compete with passion. You can't. If one person's not passionate, the other person's passionate, the one that has passion is the one that thrives and survives and beats everyone, because they're willing to work day and night and they don't get exhausted. What makes us stressed out is not work, it's purposeless work. That's exhausting.
Yes, that is exactly, that is spot on, because I'm thinking, they say it so differently in like network marketing and in the business world, like, know your why, right? Like, that's what they say, know your why. And if your why doesn't spark something inside of you, you're not going to want to, it's not really your why. That's maybe something somebody told you, or it's something that you think is expected of you, but it's not your why. I write books because, one, it's therapeutic, and we could all use therapy, just saying. But the other reason is because it brings me to life, like writing books and talking to people on a podcast and stuff like that. Like, those are things that we would say would make me happy, but there's more to it. It's a deeper happiness. There's a joy behind it, I think, almost. And it's something that if somebody had told me 20 years ago, when I was still trying to figure out who the heck I am, that, hey, find what lights you up and we'll figure out how to make it a career, that would have been amazing. But instead, I'm with you. That's why we also homeschool our kid, who she's finishing up her first year of high school. And because the schools would never know what to do with this kid who was reading at 3 years old and who can draw like nobody's business and animates like she's been to school for it. And I'm just like, there's nothing. She would be so bored sitting in a schoolroom. She would be so just caged in and overlooked. They'd be like, oh, she's fine, because I was the smart kid in class, and they're like, oh, she's fine, she doesn't need help, she doesn't need direction. they're the ones that get left behind. And so, no, I'm with you. And I would really like to read that book and share it with the world, because I agree that there is a problem with school, but that's not why we're here. But honestly, yes, if there was a way that somebody could have opened my head and poured that in, hey, your passion will take you farther than your education. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't bring you a ton of money, it's still better because you're going to be happy. You're going to get up in the morning and you're going to, what I do, I love what I do. I get up in the morning and I'm like right in alignment. I feel it, I'm excited. I'm excited to work with the people I work with. That's another thing too, that we don't consider very much is like, I've built businesses where I didn't really like the people I was doing it for. And though I love creating businesses and stuff like that, at the end of the day, I believe we're here to serve. And when we're serving to people that we really care about, like when you're writing a book, there's a reader in mind. There's somebody in mind. When I wrote the children's book, there's my daughter in mind. So I'm trying to give some little slice of wisdom, over to somebody. And I do that now. And everyone that I work with, I make sure that I don't want to work with people that I don't resonate with, because then that kills my passion. That's like, oh, no. And there's another saying no, right? Like, no, thanks. Doesn't matter how much you pay me. See you later. That's really important too. And that's important in the same way that I said that the art is an expression of you and your business is an expression. Everything's an expression. You're going to attract the people that are like you too. You start to really stand in your truth and be who you are, because then you say, "Oh, this person is so humble. I really love them." But it's like, yeah, it's a mirror to you. You're also humble. Everything is. So you're starting to attract people that you really love. Like you have this like real desire to just pour your heart out. And that's been a big lesson for me, because you can put a lot of time and energy into building something for somebody that at the end of the day won't really appreciate and won't feel what you're doing. But I had a client yesterday, I said, do you mind if we take an extra 15 minutes, he's like, oh my God, like, absolutely, I'll move whatever. Like, I really respect your time. I just felt like, oh, wow, here's somebody that really values me, So, and it's a win-win because I value him too. So, who you work with, saying no around that too. Yeah, so important.
It is. And I think, and there's this keyword again that we use. It's your target market, right? Your target market needs to be identified. And in my case, it's a target reader, right? Like I need to know everything about who might pick up my book, their age, maybe their values. What do they want to feel? What do they want to experience? What do I want them to experience when they read my book? And I'll say this to authors who are listening, like your book, your work is not for everyone. Like as much as you would like to sell a copy of your book to every single reader on the planet, like it's a blessing that they don't all of those people don't buy it, because your book has an audience and that audience wants to talk about your book, and anyone else, they're either going to ignore you. There's a potential they'll leave a negative review because they didn't connect with it, or they might discourage other readers from picking it up. So yeah, like you have to know the people that you want to connect with. And when I sit down to write, like that's who I'm writing for. I'm writing for me and people like me who want to read these stories of, happily ever afters, but you got to struggle to get there and that kind of thing. Like and not everybody wants that. Some people want it darker. Some people want it lighter. So you have to know exactly who you are trying to reach with that brand that you are creating. So yeah, I love that. It's almost like finding your business soulmate, which is hard to do because you do have to be willing to filter and say no. But boundaries are so hard because we want everyone to love us. We want everyone to embrace us. And that's not healthy.
Yeah. And it used to be that, there was like top 10 lists, that it was all about getting on the top 10 or spreading your book as far and wide, getting on the top seller list, but those times are dead. People need to realize that those times, there is no top 10 list anymore. It's all in silos. There's too many options. There's, just like a tree that, behind me that just evolves and has branches. We used to be at the trunk, there was just one channel. There was just, when we were kids and just watching TV, there's like 3-4 channels. Now there's a number of channels, from podcasts to different websites to different platforms, social media. So you can't write for the masses anymore. The key now is to write for yourself. Yeah, to write. Really, self-doubt is the enemy, that's what has to come out, is like that first initial, I think getting to know who that reader is and how do you want to change them. That's the beauty of storytelling, is there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we as the reader can go through that journey, and there's a change that can unlock in that lesson that you get from that, the one metaphor that just shifts you and like, oh wow, gives you a new perspective. I think that's so powerful and fascinating at the same time, the magic of that. And the passion of if that's what you like doing, writing, like for me, if I look back, I don't know if it's like that for you, Jen, but when you look back, like I've been writing since I'm 18, like consistently. Like you can look at daily blogs from, more than a decade ago for me, daily writing, and you'll find them in the archives. My Daily Wellness was like where I started as a blog. But before that, there was other ones. I don't even think they're on the internet anymore. But if I look back, I can go, what have I done consistently, like over my life? That was like brushing my teeth, and it's writing. So it's like, oh my God, I've had this fascination for just getting that out there and just writing. And like you said, it's therapeutic, but there's like so many reasons why somebody would write, to share, I feel sort of an urge in me to share the wisdom through my journey, right? I feel like I'm somebody that's went to the edges, like really pursuing edges, my own edges, to go, okay, I'm dropping everything, I'm going to become a millionaire. I do that, or I'm going to be an international athlete, and I've done that. And then I'm like, okay, what's next? Okay, how about I let it all go and see what happens then? And then let it all go. And it's like, and then there's this urge in me to be like, hey, like, this is what I've done, this is what I've concluded by going into that edge, and sort of like, it's like a blind walking with their stick, in an alleyway. You're hitting one side, you're hitting the other side, to find that middle path for yourself. And then I want to share that middle path and be like, yeah, I've been down that road. It's not the right way. I've been down this road. It's not the right way. And for me, and if somebody resonates with that, good. If they don't, good also, but there is this urge to share that wisdom.
For sure. Well, and you're given a story, right? And what you do with that story, you can be selfish and hold on to it, and that's fine. Maybe not every story is meant to be shared with the world, but there is somebody who will benefit from hearing your story of success, of failure, of heartbreak, of whatever. Your story is meant for somebody. That's my opinion. I don't think that we are given this life to hold on to and keep to ourselves, because goodness gracious, how boring of a life would it be that if I had to spend all of my time with just myself and just living with myself? Like, no, thank you. There are other people out there who can uplift and inspire and make me go, oh, I've never considered that before. And then it broadens my horizons and my opportunities and ability to experience life differently, which, like, I'm all about it. Let's grab life by the horns and let's go. I mean, we bought a farm. I lived in a subdivision, and 6 years ago we bought a farm, and I have goats and chickens. Like, I grew up at the beach. Like, that's not a thing, but now I have a farm, and I love my little farm life. It's fantastic, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, because all of a sudden we said, let's do something different. And now, that's a whole nother group of people that I can talk to and be like, you want to hear about my goats and chickens? Like, I love it. And so, but I digress. And so thinking about, having that creative outlet and being, just out there in the world and in art, I struggle to move from that to the business side of things, and trying to make that balance happen. And so where do we find, I went out on a limb and I hired a virtual assistant, which I know not everybody can do, but there's so much administrative work that just distracts from the creativity, and it gets in my way of wanting to live that expressive life and live through my art and that kind of thing. So, like, how do you balance that, having an artistic vision, but also the practical aspects of running a business?
Yeah, it's Alan Watts has a good talk on this. He says, I just want to share my art. I just want to serve the world. And now you give me all the paperwork that I need to fill out. Like it's it's so annoying. Um, yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of paperwork stuff, I really delegate that. I don't want to have anything to do with that stuff. There's people that is their passion. That is what they're here for. So that's something to move to somebody else. The other aspects is all art, I find. Like even when we think it's not sometimes, like how much you charge, how much you can get creative in how you charge. You can make the rules. How you build a business model is just completely art. Like how you incentivize people in your company, completely art. Like you can gamify it, make it fun. You can, there's so many ways you can do things. For me, when it gets into like taxes and accounting and all this stuff, I don't enjoy that at all. So I know that I need to get somebody else to do it. I'm not very good at it. It's going to burn me out just even trying to think about it. So you have to be open to delegating. And sometimes we hold on, either that we are perfectionists and we think that no one can do it, that we'll do it good enough. Sometimes we don't know how to communicate it to somebody else, and let's say so we don't know how to articulate it. Like, okay, I don't know where to start with handing my finances over to somebody. It's like I need to sit down and just at least create some order in just the way where things are and what I actually need out of somebody. I just need you to give me an income statement. I just need you to tell me how much money I have. So just figuring out what you want to articulate to those people is a really useful thing in delegating. Another thing is sometimes we don't want to give it up because if we do, we feel like we're useless. Like we're not, they're going to think, well, I don't know what I'm doing if I hand over my finance, especially as a business coach, right? Like handing something over to someone, they're going to look at it, then they're going to think I don't. So sometimes that's in the way. So there's many reasons why we don't delegate, but what I would say is that if there's no passion there, if it's a real resistance and it's actually weighing on you, then just find somebody and just pay for it and just get them to do it, because if you're going to be able to spend your time doing the things that matter, which is, let's say, writing, more time writing, less time dealing with that stuff, and that'll pay for itself in the end.
Yeah, I've almost convinced my 14-year-old to work for me this summer with like creating creative content because she's good at it. Like I'm not. That is not. I hate that part of things. And so I've almost convinced her to work for me. But I know there's also college students who are looking for experience for their portfolios when it comes to, I had one, she was working on a book cover designing, like she wanted to try her hand at that. And so we walked through that process, just for experience for them, but then, hey, you've got a potential book cover in your back pocket kind of thing. So, utilize the people that are good at it and are passionate about it. Yes, I think that is fantastic.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a lot of things around self-worth around this. That we're like, they're a little too expensive. But could it be that your view on finding everything expensive is the actual block to where you could be? Because there's maybe a scarcity mindset there. And this is often, I find, the case that we're not willing to pay a lot, but the lack of willingness is often what's in the way that keeps you where you're at, keeps you in that. And until you put the money down, which is a real show of values, you put the money down and say, okay, I'm doing this for myself. I'm tired of doing it, and I'm going to overpay. And I know I'm overpaying, but I'm going to get this person to do it. Watch what unlocks when you do these things. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I just needed to pay more. And being in the coaching business, I see that a lot. Like with, somebody coming to see me and being like, whoa, that's way too expensive, because I'm not cheap,
Sure.
So You're like, that's a lot. And that can be the same applied to an artist listening to this right now and somebody not willing to pay for their painting. Like, that's okay. I'm not for you, you know, and they'll be like, you know, and then sometimes I get somebody that I know really well that reaches out to me. Maybe they've been following me for years, you know, and they've been sending me messages along the way. And then they're like, okay, I'm ready. And then I give them the price and they're like, oh, I'm not really ready. Yeah. And I tell them, like, there's no cost to what I do. There's a price to it. But I'm in the business of giving you money back. So it's an interesting thing, because I've sold a lot of things in my life, like I said, from personal training, where it's less tangible, right? Like, you're coming to me, you're paying a price, I'm giving you health, losing weight, whatever that is, and you put your own price value on it. But when you're selling money, basically, like, you pay me $100 and I should deliver more than $100 back to right in your wallet, right? And very tangible, very concrete, like, exchange. But there's this gap of like, oh, do I trust him? Do I trust his process? Do I trust myself? And that's where often it's like the commitment itself is what's in the way. Like, commitment itself. Once you take the leap, so many people are on the edge of the cliff, like, wanting it. It's right there. I have the solution. I've been in their shoes. Exactly. Okay. So they want to get from point A to point B. Let's say they own a personal training studio and they want to get to $1 million in sales. I've been there. I've done it. I know the recipe. I know how to do it. But they're on the edge of the cliff going, no, I'm not willing to invest a few $1,000s with him. It's like, okay, well, then you're going to keep doing what you're doing. And it's going to just take you longer. Not to say you can't do it on your own. You can, I'm sure. But it may take you 7 years when it could take you a year, you know? So often we have these inner blocks towards delegating so we can remain in the thing that we're passionate about. I have this thing, it's the 3 commitments that are important. And that is commitment to your passion, commitment to your purpose, and commitment to your practice. It's the 3 P's. And because, let's face it, the practice element, you know, even though I love writing, some days I don't feel like it, but I do it anyways. Right? You can't, I'm of the school of belief that, you know, the creativity, you have to practice. You have to push through all the time. And 1 page a day, at the end of the year, you have 365 pages. It's pretty amazing. You know, little by little.
Oh, yeah. And I think, you know, the common thread there is sacrifice. Sometimes you have to be willing to make sacrifices, but are the sacrifices you're making, are they worthwhile? Are they the ones that are going to bring you the most reward in the end? Or are you saying, well, I'm making sacrifices, but it's really like, what are you giving up in place of? You know, because how many hours a day do we spend doom scrolling through social media? How many, you know, if you go check your timer on your screen time on your phone, it's going to laugh at you most of the time and say, you know what, you could have been sacrificing, but we don't. Instead, we're like, hey, I'm going to give up something ridiculous. And I'm like, your biggest time suck. Find it. Get rid of it. Quit making the excuses. And that's a problem for me. I'm not pointing fingers. Like, it is a problem that I will easily fall into trying to be mindless and thinking that's going to help my creativity. And it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's so true. Such a true.
Oh, yeah.
I see it like a circle, like that you're either creating or consuming.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like, you're either spinning this way and consuming, you know, like everyone else, and you're not going to get rewarded by consuming in this day and age. You know, you're just going to consume. Instead, you catch yourself like, oh, I'm consuming. What can I go create instead? Instead of reading articles, why don't I create articles? Why don't I go write? Why, you know, instead of watching this video, even on how to build this business, go and start it. Go try, because all of the solutions are within you. It's just we have lack of confidence. To me, procrastination is a lack of confidence. We basically just procrastinate in our creation, and just because we have to wait and we have to like really sit with like, okay, like this urge to push that confidence out, you know. So I just try to, like Stephen Pressfield, the resistance, in the book, The War of Art, one of my favorite books. And he says, the resistance is there, the lizard brain that's just like, do what's easy, do what's comfortable. And you got to fight that resistance and just be like, no, I know how to do this. I'm just going to get started. Like right now, after this call, I have to put a PDF together to sell a plot of land with a house. I've never done that before, but I'm just going to dive in and just start to put images and start to put text and create, because I can put myself in the end user's mind, that's going to read this and what he would want to see or what I would want to see. And that's it at the end of the day, I don't need to go look at how everyone else is doing it. I can just do it. And we get caught up in this lack of confidence in ourselves to just start to, I'm just going to read about it, or I'm going to go watch this about it. And all we're doing is just like building up this confidence slowly to end up saying, okay, I'm going to do it. Well, you knew the answer all along.
Yes. And so I had a guest in season 1. She had been working on her manuscript for 5 years. And here's the thing, like you can't produce a good manuscript and take that long. That sounds terrible, but like the same manuscript for 5 years, send it to somebody else and let them edit it. Like send it along, get somebody else's feedback, because you're going to constantly tell yourself it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It'll never be good enough if that is the mindset that you have. So yeah, you have to be like, it's time to let go and put it out there into the world. Now, that being said, for writers, editors make all the difference. Like they do. They make all the difference. You could be a really great writer, but you still need an editor. But they're there to help you along the way. So find those people who are going to take your work and make it better, but quit holding on to it, because it's never going to get you anywhere if you're just going to sit there and stare at it and go, it'll never be good enough.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm preaching this stuff right now, but I get caught by it so much.
Oh, yeah.
Right now I'm writing this book. And I feel like if I don't write it in a very short time frame, it's like my views start to change and my doubts start to creep in. And then I'm looking at it again and I'm like, nah. And then the whole thing turns to shit. Like, and I'm just like, this is garbage. What is this? No. And it's like, so I found with my own process that like, I need to just spend a few days and just get it all out at once. And that's step 1. Like, because now with this one that I'm writing, I'm in this stage. I made this mistake because I was like, okay, like posts and articles are different because it changes day to day and it's fine. It's a completion that's short. But with a book, I'm like, this is only me personally, I don't know if this applies to anyone else, but I will, like this one, I dragged it on. Like I was like, okay, I'll start with the first section, then I'll go to the next one. And I had the third one. And then I ended up looking back at the first one. And I'm like, is that really the title I want for it? Then I'm like, oh God, why was and I lost the purpose. And then I lost, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, where do I start? Now it looks like spaghetti, like I don't know where to even untangle this. The first part of it doesn't match sort of where I want the ending to be. And now I'm like discouraged and I'm like, I hate this book.
I've been there.
I'm literally there right now. And it's just like, I need to, and I think my solution to it is what I just told you. It's like, I need 2-3 days of just not starting from scratch, but really, really defining again, why did I write this? Like, what is the purpose of this? Who is this for? And then start again from that. And you're right, that Rick Rubin talks about it in his book, like you read his new book, Rick Rubin?
No, I have not read his new book yet.
Fantastic book. I can't get the title right now, but yeah, to really divide these parts that are so different in the creation phase, but then the next stage of like editing, like hand that off. It's not for you to do, like, and that's been definitely a lesson. And there's also resistance to doing that too,
Yeah.
Because you don't want them changing too much, and this is my voice, my style, my flavor. I'm really picky about that. Like most of my books actually have not, like, there's been no editor. It's just been me, just raw. There's mistakes. It's just been, here's what I wrote, and there's mistakes. Get over it. If you don't like it, don't read it. It's just purely my voice. And there's something about that I really like, but it also doesn't spread if you do it like that, because there's a lot of people that will just look at that and go, the message didn't really get across as well as it could have. So as I'm saying it, I'm torn between the two.
Well, I will say that without an editor, I don't think that I would have gotten, like, I am a throw commas around like glitter kind of girl, like just in case we're going to put a glitter comma here and here and here. And so, people would have been going, oh, there's a lot of commas in this book. Like it would have been very evident. And so I have an editor for reasons like that. I have beta readers who go back through, like I actually am sending my next book to my beta readers June 1st. It goes out, and for them to help me make sure that the story makes sense and that kind of thing, because that feedback is crucial to a good book. Now it's a little different when you're looking at fiction versus nonfiction. I think, I wouldn't even know where to start with the nonfiction feedback loop of any sort. But yeah, I think that I have to have feedback as much as I don't like it, because it means that I've done something wrong in my mind. I have to have that kind of feedback.
That's awesome. And I think, yeah, I admire that. I'm a little impatient for it. I feel, and I guess I have quite the ego of like,
I don't know. I would rather have somebody tell me, hey, fix it and make it better, than me put it out there and be like, man, she sucks.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you write fiction, and I've always been like, wow, like I have like a children's one that I wrote fiction, but, I've always read nonfiction. I used to be actually addicted to reading, like addicted. I used to read like 3 books a week, on audio, one on audio, one written, one on my Kindle. I did that for like 10 years, like just the nonfiction. It's like started in the health world, and then I moved to the business world, and then I moved to spirituality. And in those 3 categories, I've read all the major books, I always pushed away fiction books. Like I felt like they were a waste of time for me. Like I was like, no, I need to know like the information, and I felt like it wasn't useful enough or something. But then yeah. But then
that's right. No offense.
No, I'm not. That was me before.
Okay.
Yeah, but then I realized the lessons in fiction, and how it sort of ingrains more of the lesson, because it's more of a picture. It's not just like here's how you do it. It's just like, oh, I went on a journey, and that person that went on a journey that moved me in a way is like now ingrained in the way I see the world. It's so much more powerful. So I'm really envious of like people that can write like fiction books, and they get lost and create their own worlds. Like, wow,
yeah,
so cool.
It's also a little unhealthy, because we do talk to imaginary people quite often. So I will just put that out there. But it really is. It's fascinating, because I am not a nonfiction reader, and it may be because grad school just took the fun out of it for me. Like there's just nothing about nonfiction that I want any part of, and it's been a very long time since I was in grad school. But like I don't know, that is not the word for me. No offense. I think there's a time and place for it. If it helps, my husband is super into nonfiction, so we balance the whole universe when it comes to fiction versus nonfiction. But yeah, no, like you said, you could put away 3 books a week, and I'm like, I wish that was my problem. But like this past weekend, I sat on the couch, here and there, and I put away 3 books on Saturday and Sunday, because I am addicted to reading, and it's not healthy. It's not a good thing. because you do get lost in these worlds. But I do agree that there is something to be said for there. I do read some nonfiction. Most of it is for like my own personal business, gains and that kind of thing. I don't sit there and read history. I don't sit there and read that kind of nonfiction. But yeah, there is a time and place, I think, for both. And so having a healthy balance in your reading choices as well as your business, I think that is a good message that they can take away from that conversation. So what kind of projects are you working on that you're excited to share with us? What do you have going on right now?
Right now, I'm totally rebranding myself, which is really cool, really fun. I'm so excited about it. I've recently uh, got information, from a client, a mentor of mine, that was an old mentor of mine, like back when I was in my early 20s. Really admire the guy. He's a serial entrepreneur, and to me, the process of branding, is very much like taking a rock, and carving it into a diamond. And there's a product. Well, there's like a business before product market fit, and there's a business after product market fit. And that, for those that don't know this term in business, it's just where it aligns and people are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a while, like that process of like, I'm building this business. No one really can understand what I'm saying in the language, in what I'm trying to do, as clear as I'm trying to be. It's not hitting like, and to me, that true essence is, are people willing to pay for it? So it'd be the same in any art form, like the book you're creating. Does it land? To me, it's, are people willing to pay for it? Does the cover and the wording and the subheading and everything about that book say, pick me up and read me? That's really difficult to grasp, because it's culture, right? And cultural ideas are always changing. And it could be just one word that all of a sudden like clicks because it's culturally accepted right now. But if you would have written it 2 months ago, it wouldn't have landed. That's how crazy the culture is. And I find that's fascinating because it's like the memosphere of memes. And there's a timing that we just need to connect to that meme, and it just starts to work. So I've been, 2 years at it as a business coach, trying to find the right messaging, asking my clients, you're talking about feedback for your book. I'm constantly surveying my clients. Like, what is it that pulled you in? What is it? What did he say? What do you say to friends about me? Like, about my process, all this stuff that when it comes to business, I'm very much always gathering info. And I just haven't really nailed the messaging, and it's been a frustration for 2 years. Now, every business I've had has taken around 2 to 3 years to actually nail the message. So it's not something, it's a love-hate relationship that I have, because I love it. I love the like chase and getting it, but it's frustrating because you're not making any money at that time. Like, I mean, I make money through my coaching,
Right.
referrals, but I'm talking about getting a stranger to pick up your book, that's never heard of you, but it's so intriguing they picked it up. Just like when I had my fitness studios, that they walk by and they look at the sign, the storefront, and they go, I'm going to go check what's in there. Or when I had my meditation studio, I'd stand on the street and ask for a full day, ask people, why aren't you going inside? What is it about it that's pushing you away? What is it about it that's intriguing to you? Like, what so I'm just trying to gather feedback on what it is. Anyways, so this mentor of mine, Scott, that reached out to me for help for me. He's like, hey, can I ask you a question? I need your help. And I was like, wow, I was so honored, because this is somebody that had helped me when I was in my early 20s. I said, absolutely. Like, let's jump on a call right now, and I'm going to help you. So he's helping. Was asking me the same thing. What do you think about my messaging? Like, what do you think about that? And then I helped him, and he said, you helped me unlock something. Cool. Awesome. And then afterwards, he goes, how do I pay you back for this? Like, how do I help you? I said, man, give me your feedback on what you think I'm doing. I'm totally open to, I respect you. I believe in the way you see life. So please just tell me. And he said, here's what I think you really do. You help people unstuck. That's what you do. And I was like, boom, instantly I felt like, yeah, that does incorporate everything I do into one. And so I just recently changed my website like a few days ago, like get unstuck, with some little stickman drawing of a guy drowning in paperwork. And it's like, yeah, unstuck. So I don't know if it's the true messaging yet, but it's a level closer. It's another refining that I feel is closer to the essence that is the diamond in me that wants to shine out, into the culture.
Like that. And we've all been stuck. So like we know what that means. We know what it means to get unstuck. And sometimes we do need somebody to kind of peel us away and be like, you're not stuck anymore. So no, it's a great message.
Yeah, and on that point, like think about that. Like it's really hard to see yourself. That's why, like, when you send it to the editor, that's why I said I'm envious, because it's so important, because it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame.
Yeah.
It's like you can point it out to somebody else so easily. It's like having bad breath. Your nose is only 1 inch above your mouth, but you need somebody else to tell you your breath stinks.
Mm-hmm.
It's the
that's a great analogy.
Yeah, right. I heard it and I was like, oh my God, this is so true. Like, it's like looking at your own eyeball or touching your own fingertip with the same fingertip. We have such a difficulty. And I'm starting to believe that it's impossible. I'm starting to really believe that it's impossible for you to get that without feedback.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're just stuck in your head like a dog trying to chase its tail. Like why isn't this landing? And it's all like you trying to figure this out, yet somebody else from the outside just goes, oh no, like don't use that word, use this word.
It changes everything.
One word makes the whole difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I'm with you. And it's perspective. It is literally its perspective. Like we cannot, because again, whether it's ego or self-esteem or whatever the case may be, like we have all of these voices inside of us saying, I can't, no, this is how it has to be, but it's not working. Well, like I cannot load. So we have moved several times in our 20 years of marriage, and I cannot load a U-Haul truck to save my life. Like I can't. There is no way that I will get everything in there first try. My husband walks up and he's like, oh, just do this and this. And like, he's the Tetris master. And it's like, oh, we have extra room in the truck now that he has taken over, kind of thing. And so like, it's perspective, and it's that ability to say, this is my weakness, but this is my strength. And so we're going to work together to make whatever you're working on the best it can be. So yeah, like helping people get unstuck, like that's huge. And I love that message. And so maybe you will stick with that to get people unstuck.
Yeah, hopefully that lands. Yeah, because it's like the same problem I was trying to solve. All the wording that I was using is saying the same thing, but there's just something about the wording that wasn't landing. Mm-hmm. I just find that fascinating. I could say get unstuck in so many different ways. I could say get your time back. Yeah. I could say get organized, take control of your schedule. Like all these other ways that you get unstuck, but like just using the right word can sometimes unstuck yourself.
Go unstuck yourself. There you go. That's your new catchphrase. Maybe not. You can send royalties too. I'm just kidding. So we're to the point of the show. We've kind of gone over a little bit, but it's been such a fascinating conversation. But I want to offer the opportunity to flip the script. Do you want to be the host of the show for any amount of time?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Then take it away.
Okay. First, my first question that's really coming to mind is, how do you, so we've talked about in this talk about sort of your authentic expression in a way, like really saying no and saying yes, and this is who I am, and this is what I'm putting out there. And then by the end of this conversation, we also talked about other people's judgment of your work. right? Like how we just offload this to somebody and say, okay, you know, you're doing. How do you find this balance between your authentic expression of what you want to do because it's yours, and what the judgment of somebody else? How do you find that balance?
That is a great question, and one that I've never been asked before. So honestly, with my first book, when I put it out there, like I was even scared to let my family read it, not because I thought it was a bad book. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was a great story. I wrote it because it was a book I wanted to read. But I was scared that it would be seen as you're trying to be something you're not, because I've never written a book before, you know, and that kind of thing. And so it took probably the next year of me slowly. I mean, it was not, I was excited to put it out there because I knew I needed to be able to pay for the process. Like I knew I needed to be able to pay for all of the resources that I used. And so I was like, I have to share it. In other words, it's going to, you know, leave me in the negative. And so I slowly started putting things out there, and after probably the first several good reviews from people I didn't know, you know, that weren't my mom or my sister, who was my editor, you know, if it was from somebody else, I realized, oh, it might actually be a good book. Like people actually like it. But it came down to, I wanted everybody to like my book. That's not how that works. Like I said earlier, your book is not for everybody. And so I did have to, it was literally a shift in my mindset that I didn't write this book for everybody. I didn't write my next book for everybody. And I definitely haven't written my most recent book for everybody. Like it is a totally different genre. And, you know, I'm having to kind of change gears there. So it's been a shift in mindset, and finding my people and finding the people that I can trust to give me honest feedback. Do I like it? Not always, because they tell me that, hey, you've got a big hole here in the story, or I am bored to tears by the time I got to this part of the book. That's kind of where we are with the current book that comes out in October. There's this muddled middle that I'm just like, I'm so bored by the time I get to it. And my editor was like, it needs something. And I'm like, it needs something. And I'm not sure what it is. And so I'm sending it to beta readers in a couple of weeks, and they're going to come back to me and be like, this is what it needs. And I'm going to trust that they're readers. They know how to read books, and they know what they want in a book. And I'm going to take that feedback and I'm going to incorporate it in some form or fashion. But changing my mindset to be open to feedback, that is where that balance comes from. And also knowing when to filter out crappy feedback, because I've had people say, well, this wasn't really my genre. I'm like, then why the crap did you read it? Like, why are you picking up a book that's not your genre and leaving feedback on it? Put it back on the shelf and walk away. Like, but at that point, you know, you just kind of have to quit caring so much what other people think and know what is best for your work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How do you discern that? Like, the crap feedback from the good feedback?
I think when I can incorporate the feedback, and it makes a better story. Like my focus is on the characters first. Like my characters mean the world to me. They're where all of my stories start. Like the characters show up and they say, hey, we have a story to tell. And so I start writing their story. And if their feedback is not going to take away from the characters that I've already developed, because the characters are fully formed and developed before the plot ever happens. Like they are people and they may as well be real. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. They're my imaginary friends, and we have conversations, and I get to know them through just coming up with their backstories. And so I know everything about them. As long as the feedback doesn't change them at their core, then it's pretty good feedback. The one that I was just talking about, you know, she was like, it's a new adult contemporary romance. And so the age range is 18 to like 35, in that genre. Well, she's well past 65, and it was not the book for her. Like it just wasn't. And so when you know that about who is giving you the feedback, like it's pretty easy to filter out. That's not going to work for me.
Out of all your characters, which one do you relate to the most?
Oh, goodness gracious. Relate to the most. It's really funny. People ask all the time, they're like, did you write yourself into your book? And I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, part of my soul is in the book because it came from inside of me, like the story did. I guess in my first book, the female main character, she's really strong, and she's got this extrasensory intuition that kind of happens. So I can relate to that. There's another character in the first book. He's kind of a skeptic on things. I can relate to that. So, there's different parts of my characters that I connect with on different levels. But I guess in my most recent book, it's called Fall When You're Ready, the female main character she's kind of trying to find herself through her writing. And that was kind of how it happened for me. Granted, she started way sooner in life than I did, but yeah, I think she is the one I most closely relate to, just because she found her voice and it took her places. So
how do you start your writing process? Like, you just talked about character building, the backstory. Do you start there and it organically grows, or do you have a metaphor that you want to reach? Do you have what does that process look like to you, the starting point?
It's funny. My first book came because I had a dream. I woke up and I thought, how did that end? That would have been really interesting to know how that ended. And so I just kind of started writing. Then the second book was because I needed to make sure those characters were okay. And so I checked in with them and they kind of had another story for me. But this most recent book, like, I am a diehard 90s country music fan. Like, I always have been. I've loved it since it was new music in the 90s. And so I heard a song on the radio and these characters popped in my head and they said, "This is our song. Now tell our story." And it just kind of happened. I don't know. It was their first dance at prom song, and it just kind of spiraled from there. So I can't really tell you how it starts, other than the characters show up and say, "We have a story for you to tell."
That's so cool.
Oh, it's wild. God. It's pretty weird.
So much better of an answer than I was thinking.
Yeah, and it drives me wild and I feel silly sometimes saying it that way, because these people are like, "Oh yeah, no, I have 3 points in a poem and I put it all together and I have this book." And I'm like, you will not find a formula in my books. Like, there's not. It's just wherever the characters go, that's where the story goes. And people seem to like that pretty good. I mean, that's how I read. I want to read and connect with the characters. So that's where all of my stories start.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Pretty wild. Well, thank you for hosting our show today. Jean-Luc, how can listeners connect with you?
CoachJeanLuc.com. And yeah.
Fantastic. And I have one more question. It is the big question. It's your exit ticket for this conversation to end. So we'll know how you feel about that when you answer this question or don't. What is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear absolutely nothing else?
To trust yourself. Trust yourself is what I try to get across to everyone, that you have all the power within. Just trust yourself and you can do anything that you want in life.
I love that. It's plain, it's simple, and you're giving instincts for a reason, so you should probably use them. Well, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation. I hope the best and most success for you as you help people get unstuck. I think that it's actually really quite needed in our very busy and ever-changing world.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jen. It was a pleasure talking to you. I love this talk about where art meets business. Something I haven't done.